What's up? I'm back. In this segment, I'm gonna get a little religious and talk about Jesus. um, Jesus is always an interesting topic. I think partly because no matter where you stand, if you worship him, if you don't believe he exists, um, or if you think it's just a nice story, like you're into stories and you don't know if he exists or not, but it's a good story and you learn from it. No matter which side of the leg or which aisle you stand on, the crazy part is that when when the name Jesus um kind of like releases such a response from people, you know that the force is powerful, the energy is powerful. And that's the funny thing. Like when I hear people say, well, he doesn't exist, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter if he exists. If people believe it, he existed. That force has energy in the astral plane. So that is still an actual force that people are praying to. So when it comes to that, I'm not gonna get into that, whether you believe he was real or not. I'm gonna come. I'm an alchemist. So I'm gonna come from the Jesus angle, from an alchemist perspective on this one, and why the Jesus story is very important. And the key part where it said he died for your sins is very important because many Messiah seeds, I like to call them, or star seeds, or indigo. Some people even say indigos, but star seeds, Messiah seeds. Um, for those individuals, it's extremely important concept to understand. Jesus died for your sins. Is it important to understand because Jesus himself died for your sins? Not necessarily. It's important for the alchemic principle of what it means, which is the key. Many Messiah seeds have been conned into, like, we have bad relations with our family. Most Messiah seeds do, right? And the funny thing is that, when you have bad relationship with your family, you probably are isolated from society. Um, it's almost become normal for people who practice spirituality to have a bad relationship with people in the matrix, because people who practice spirituality would say that people in the matrix are blind, which honestly I can't say that they're wrong, right? The funny part of it though is that they don't realize that once they do that, and then they further isolate themselves because of that. And most people don't really realize that once you do that, you already fought, you already failed. If that makes any sense. Meaning that on this path, and I made a video a long time ago, you're the God of your family, or you could say you're the Messiah of your family. So your family is usually the first person you're sent to, right? So, and friends. When I'm saying this, I'm saying family and close friends, because a lot of you guys have had friends that you incarnated with many lifetimes as well, believe it or not. Sometimes that's a stronger bond than even family. So a lot of your family and close friends um may not understand your spirituality, right? The funny part of it is most of the reason why they don't understand their spirituality is because you may have spirituality, but you're probably not balanced, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by not balanced is the fact that, for the most part, when you look at most spiritual people, they tend to be very heavy Jupiter orientated. And if you're not into planets, what I mean by that is Jupiter is usually the planet of expansion, usually of spirituality. So when you're not really trained in the arts, right, and you just have raw talent, think of it like you have seven chakras. You have seven major planets when it comes to this, right? Saturn is kind of like the planet that sometimes people get associated with the devil, because, or Satan, because it kind of restricts you, right? So for the most part, when it's ready for you to wake up, the only planet Saturn really can't restrict for the most part is Jupiter. So when you're a Messiah seed, I'm not gonna say it can't restrict Jupiter, but Jupiter can withstand it. So when you're Messiah seed, imagine Jupiter energy in you. Like, don't just look at it as Jupiter. It's energy. It's energy in you expands. When it expands, you wake up and you kind of know something's wrong with the world. Now, if you have, like, let's say the seven major powers like that, right? And only one is working, Jupiter. You wake up, but you probably wouldn't be balanced. So what does that mean? Well, it means that then you probably would start to go and read information, consume books, and you wouldn't really you would get information, but the information that you get is telling you how the matrix is not real, but it's not really telling you how to address that fact it's not real. Meaning you hear about Illuminati, but there's no solutions to it. It's not even getting you to prepare you to engage the Illuminati, because most of the time, It's like if somebody wants to learn self-defense, right? Why do you learn self-defense? You learn self-defense because just in case you got a problem, you might have to do something, right? So it's the same thing with conspiracy information. Most of it, it's heavy Jupiter, so it's heavy expanding the mind, but it's not grounded. There is no, meaning Earth. There's no Earth. Mars is structure. Mercury is communication and networking, being able to get the information, process it, and then be able to do something with it by helping other people. That stuff doesn't exist. And so then what happens is when you're a Messiah seed and you're imbalanced, the people around you who are matrix people, I'm not gonna lie, they have a matrix, they have a certain way of judging people, which is very limited and a lot of times unfair. And they judge you, and then you get isolated. The whole thing is this is kind of part of the spiritual progress. This is part of the spiritual evolution, your spiritual evolution. What I mean by that? Well, look at it this way: in the world, and when the source sends you, or the source of the higher forces send you a blessing, right? There's a saying that says when you get a blessing, you get an obstacle, or you get a curse, because it's about sometimes being able to navigate through the obstacles. And when you defeat those obstacles, or what I said, crossroads in some videos, when you pass those crossroads, you get more power from that. So it's like like a person who's rich, right? Got fired, started their own business, and they became rich. And then they had the obstacle, they wouldn't have became rich. Some healers you see today always start off as sickly people, and they're famous healers now. But if they weren't sick, they probably wouldn't be healers. That happens all the time. So the obstacles are part of the spiritual growth. This part obstacles are part of the process of spiritual evolution, spiritual growth. This comes in because even people so-called hating on you or being negative to you is part of your spiritual growth. This is the difference. So your family probably gonna hate on you more than anybody. Why? Well, most people when you mate, they don't really mate based on any type of astrology or spiritual energy. They mate based on three chakras. I keep it real, right? They're based on straight up physical attributes. So what happens? Well, when you start getting spiritual information, your energy is starting to go above the first three chakras. So then your family wouldn't be able to relate to you. So then in their mind, the only way to relate to you is to suppress you. Is it personal? You might take it personal, but on this spiritual path, you got to realize that if you're supposed to do great things, you will have great obstacles. So you shouldn't take it personal. The problem is that when you look at it from a certain perspective, when you look at it from the alchemic perspective, what was Jesus when he said, his father has more knowledge than anybody above earth, on the earth, underneath the earth. A lot of times he was talking about the elemental kingdoms. Many people don't know this. Many people, you know, or races that live kind of below us, above us, like cloud people. And when he was talking about that, the alchemic part of the story, the alchemical part of the story is being able to bond with the elements in the elemental kingdoms. What that really means is on earth, you're going to get obstacles. You're going to get haters. You're going to get people who are not going to believe you. Everybody needs a supporting cast. I don't care who you are, right? You need support. That's why the ancestors are so important because a lot of times when the ancestors came about, the ancestors, even if they were assholes in this life, sometimes in the next life, they kind of realize that it's bigger than just the physical. So a lot of times your ancestors will end up being supportive, a supporting cast. You could take the elemental kingdoms as that and more because the elementals and elemental kingdoms have more power than the ancestors do. So in general, let's get into a whole bunch of stuff. But in general, they no question they do normally, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means that when you wake up, if you do it the way you're supposed to, you balance yourself. You do it in a way where it's balanced, where you understand that both the physical and spiritual worlds are important. Yes, you must be in the world but not of it, but you still in the world, so you still have to know the physical world. So you still have to. So whatever you do, whether it's going to school, working, whatever, you still have to do it and build on it. So if you don't want to work anymore, you want to be financially independent, you got to get a business. You still got to do a whole bunch of stuff before that happens, right? So you have to be responsible. That's the key. The key is about really being more responsible. But what does it really mean? Well, when it said Christ died and he came back, the reason why he was able to resurrect himself from an alchemic point of view is because he was no longer human at that point. See, that's what happens in the journey when you start alchemy. When you start alchemy, when you talk about philosopher's stone and make you immortal, what they're really saying is eventually you become more than human. What does becoming more than human mean? Well, we could talk about family, but the real reason why, you know, let's say you can't use your superpowers, or let's say the world like you can't really do the things that your mind wants to do, right? All the superpowers, all the other things, the Jedi stuff that people want to do, the quarantine. Why does it exist? Because everybody, the collective human consciousness, agrees to go by these laws. That's what happens. So when the collective human consciousness agrees to go by those laws, your physical environment is holding you down, right? So when you become more than human, what does that mean? Well, it means that from this point on, the physical environment, or I would even say your fellow humans' suppressive personality or suppressive energy, while it might affect you, you could supersede that, override that. That's the difference. So when you talk about all these different races um, in other dimensions, what does that mean? Jinns, fairies, they are tapping into another consciousness now. So they, whether you believe in them or not, doesn't mean they don't exist, if that makes any sense, which is a key element to understand. Why? Because they're not human anymore. What does that mean? Well, that means exactly what it means. Meaning, when the Christ story is a story of an initiate, when you, not the stuff that you've been told, but even the Gnostic stuff where he went to all over the world and he gathered all the information up and he put it together. That's a story of an initiate, right? So even when it says Tibet, India, Egypt, when he went to all these places, Persia, and gathered information, put it together in some new, in like a newly packaged material. I think he even retired it in like East Africa, right? He it was like a newly material that he created, that it's kind of like represents himself, like combined the alchemy of the East and alchemy of the West, right? And when he did that, he became legendary, right? And that's a story of an initiate, but it's a story of you, meaning when you are Messiah seed, there's great responsibility that comes with that when you're a gifted individual. Even if you don't understand it, you have responsibility to your friends and family because you were sent to them first. So what does that mean? Well, imagine you, because people always talk about Nicholas Flamel and a lot of alchemists, right? Imhotep. What they don't know is that when these guys came to power and made their so-called philosopher's stone or elixir of life, which extended their lifetimes, they became gods. They also did that to their close friends and family. So a lot of beta model societies that I'm talking about, or model societies I'm talking about, exist or started off from one person, maybe two, and they then, put their friends and family on, and they became more than human. That's what that meant. So when it says that you're dying for somebody's sins, it really means if you have real spiritual information, you will convert your family eventually because your information is bettering your life both physically and spiritually. This is the matrix. So when you do better materially, people listen. Is it right? No, but that's just the way the matrix goes. So when you have real information and you better yourself from both angles, your friends and family will listen to you. The real key is, and this is why many people don't get alchemy. Alchemy is about healing. It's not about debating and a lot of other stuff that people do, right? What does that mean? Well, if your family and friends are really into healing and feeling better, you don't have to, whether the aliens exist or debating God forms or Illuminati is irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, if it's about healing, you don't have to get into politics or religion for that. That's where alchemy comes in. So let's say you become an alchemist, right? You learn these energy techniques, you learn elixirs of life and all that other stuff, and you give it to your friends and family. They will transform too. And in a sense, when it says that you die for their sins, your sacrifice is how they will live. Meaning, when you take it on the chin, when they criticize you and realize it's not personal, they're just in the matrix and they don't know any better. And then you transform and you transform them. When it says you dying for their sins, what that really means is, honestly, if you base it on logic, they shouldn't become greater than human, or they shouldn't elevate. Why? Because without you, they probably wouldn't have done it. But you have to be the one to make the sacrifice. So like, when they say the leader makes great sacrifices, that's what that means. When you're a leader, you gotta make great sacrifices. You can't act like somebody else does. So the boss in the company can't act like the secretary. Sorry, that's how it is. Or the regular accountant. The boss can't act like that either because the boss has more responsibility. So when the people criticizing the company, they're gonna talk about the CEO first. That's the bottom line. So when you look at it from that perspective, it should put things in a whole different light. Because when it says you're dying for their sins, you're doing two things. They're gonna live off you, meaning you're gonna be the one to wake them up when it's time. But the second thing is you have to become more than human. When it says become more than human, it really means alchemy, transforming yourself physically and spiritually into something else. That's what the true philosopher stone is, your body. And yes, you need outside things for that. Occasionally you do, but at the same time, the transformation is coming internally. You're merging cosmic energies and earth energies together into something totally different. That's what that means. So when people look at the Christ story and his works, look at the process to it. You understand? The Christ story is like a story of a story of an initiate that in a sense you initiate yourself. Yes, eventually a teacher will come. Yes, eventually a spiritual group will come if you're ready. But even if the teaching spiritual group is not there, you have all the tools to initiate yourself at first, in the beginning. But to initiate yourself, you gotta clean your heart. Why most people mess up is because, in a sense, they want to be their own teachers. They want to be their own masters. Everything in life, right? Drive a car, anything, school, you learn it from a teacher. Now we're in a world where more people are waking up more than ever before. So there's gonna be times when some people don't have teachers at first, but when you're ready, the teacher will come. But before you go through the physical initiation, you gotta go through the internal initiation first. I agree with that. When you're in the matrix, you gotta go through internal initiation first. And the internal initiation is a lot deeper than people think. You could just read in some books and sound deep. It's not an internal initiation. The internal initiation is transforming yourself, addressing all your old wounds, transforming them, letting them go, so you could be like a child again. Like when Christ said, to receive the keys of heaven, you must be like a child. That's what it means. You gotta be pure like a kid. Doesn't mean that nobody has bad thoughts, hasn't done bad things, but at the certain times you gotta let it go. The only way you let it go is from self-analyzation. You gotta analyze yourself. You gotta analyze the past, and you gotta let it go. A lot of wounds that you refuse to address, or scars that you refuse to address, are in your psyche like hard rock. You can't transform it. Like, you know how water is flexible. You can't transform because you refuse to address those things. So a lot of times when people think that they have knowledge, they still haven't initiated themselves yet because there's still a lot of things they haven't addressed internally. So in a lot of different ways, when you talk about dying for your sins, put it like this: Buddha, Christ, any spiritual teacher. If you're a real spiritual teacher, people probably not gonna like you. You're probably gonna go against the status quo. You probably will go against even the present spiritual communities. So are you gonna win a popularity contest? Probably not. But what happens? You succeed when you become more than human. What does that mean? Well, humans, are a fallen race. So it's almost like being in jail and transforming people, right? If you transform somebody, or the mental hospital, or in a sick hospital where you have six patients, even one, mental hospital, jail, or regular hospital with physical disease. When you're in any one of those three locations trying to transform people, are you going to take what they say, especially in jail or the mental hospital? Personally, probably not. Of course, if you're in jail, literally, you might have to because you might have to survive. But I'm talking about if you're healing people, right? What you understand that you're addressing sick people. You understand that people who have pain, people who have trauma. What does that mean? Well, it means that becoming more than human is like whatever they think about you means nothing. At the end of the day, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, it should mean nothing. Why? Because you're probably not going to win a personality contest anyway. So when they say Christ died, was put to death, obviously he didn't win a personality contest, but we still talking about him, and the people who killed him, most of them, you don't even know their names. Why? Because eventually his path superseded theirs. Meaning most people are trapped in the matrix because they're tapping into the collective consciousness, and they're scared to do things because they're scared of offending. And even if they think they're not scared of offending, they are. Because if you take it personal, you still, like, most people don't take what ants do personal because they don't think about ants, right? What does that mean for you? Well, if you really didn't care, you probably wouldn't take it personal. So even people who try to be revolutionary but take things personal, probably not really revolutionary. At the end of the day, Buddha and Christ and these things are symbolic representations of paths to follow, of what it means when you transform. What it means when you, I mean, Buddha was an Indian, and Orientals follow his stuff more than Indians do. Why? Another people follow more than his own peoples do. That happens. And in a sense, when you start transforming, there has to be something that you don't have a problem with. And actually, they're not to have a problem, expect. So when it says Jesus died for your sins, some of you doesn't mean that literally, but we'll have to make sacrifices for your friends and family for them to make it, meaning have to tap into true knowledge. And it always begins and ends with healing. So if you're practicing or tap into true knowledge, most of the time, even when you talk about healing, healing is common ground. I know for me, I may be able to talk to my family about spirituality, but I could talk to them about healing. Now, some of them won't even listen to that, but they'll listen to a lot more than if I'm talking about Illuminati and aliens. So healing is usually a common ground that most people listen to. So when you talk about dying for your friends and family, through your sacrifice, they will make it in the end if you're doing what you're supposed to do. Hope that helps. Until next time. Peace.